part of the ELCA. This is the rear narthex. You may hear a little bit of road traffic from Washington Avenue outside. Behind me is the sanctuary, and we're going to go in and we're going to have a chat with my dad about a little bit of everything. It's kind of the prelude to my story as a music director. So come on in, we'll have a conversation. Okay, so here we are at St. John Carnegie, down in Carnegie, Pennsylvania, the church that I grew up in. And I have the distinct pleasure of having a conversation with my dad. So you all hear me play every week, and this is kind of a like father, like son exposure and kind of the prequel to the story that I've told several times. So Dad, thank you for doing this with us.
No problem. We'll take you to lunch just because you're here.
Perfect. So would you mind sharing how you got into being a church musician?
I grew up in the church at Christ United Presbyterian, which is about 2 blocks from this church. I was introduced to church music by Madeline Emick, who was the organist at Christ Church. She was the first female fellow of the American Guild of Organists, and for some reason, she was at my little church in Carnegie. And I remember sitting at her feet, literally watching her play all the postludes on Sunday morning. It was amazing.
And I remember growing up that Matt and I would sneak over here to the side of the console and we would do the same thing and watch. I don't think either of us ever had the thought back then that I would have followed in your footsteps.
We didn't either, to be honest. We knew you playing euphonium, a little bit of guitar, then you were introduced to bagpipes, and then drums, and then everything else you play. So I am so honored that you have chosen to do this. It's a very rewarding career, so to speak. For 38 years, I was in advertising. And when I turned 55 and a half, I said I had enough. And my part-time gig here at St. John became full-time on the part-time salary, which is so often the case in this business.
It is. So we left off on who inspires you to keep going and to improve your playing?
That's a tough question because I'm inspired by so many people in the organ field, but also in the church. My congregation inspires me to continue to keep the high standards of music we have here. And although they don't really let me know when I haven't, I know when I haven't.
Yeah.
We all have those days.
Yes. I've had a few where my feet just were not awake yet, and pedaling is one of the weakest parts for me so far.
Takes time.
Yes.
It takes time. People ask me often, how can you play with your hands and your feet and pull stop knobs and turn pages and direct a choir? And I can only say practice and experience. I'm coming up on my 43rd anniversary as the music director here at St. John. So I've been doing this a long time. I love having people come up and watch me, and hopefully they get inspired to do what Brian did and go into this business because it's so rewarding. And it's not really a business, it's a calling. I truly feel that I'm called to be here, and I have not been called to go anywhere else.
So at 43 years, does that make you the longest tenured staff member at St. John? Have we passed Reverend Barry?
By 3 years.
By 3 years.
We passed Pastor Dittmer.
Okay.
Who was here 41, and not quite 41. He was followed by Pastor Burry, who was here for 33 or so years. The first 2 pastors were here for 75 years.
And the church is just over 150 years?
Oh, you're going to make me do math. No, it's about 142 years, I believe.
Okay, so almost twice as long as Faith has been around.
Yes, yeah.
Being that this is our 75th anniversary, we've had 3 pastors.
Okay. We're one better than you, see?
So the first pastor you worked with then was Pastor Shield.
Yes. Actually, I came 3 months before he did.
Okay.
I had an interim for my first 3 months here, and then Russ Shield was called to be the pastor, and he was from Penn Yan, New York, and then he was succeeded about 13 years later by Gordon Ray, who was here for about 7.5 or 8 years. He was succeeded by Bruce Nordine, who was succeeded after about 14 years by a couple interims. We had an extended 2 or 3 year interim, and then Pastor Sarah Irwin became our pastor 6 years ago.
Because Faith and St. John were in a call process almost around the same time.
Yep.
I'm forever entwined to Pastor Jean because her first week was the weekend after Jill and I got married.
Okay.
So those anniversaries for me will always be entwined.
Well, and I'll always remember that both Sarah and I started on May 1st.
Oh.
And so we are both celebrating our anniversary. She'll be 6 and I'll be 43.
So in 43 years, this is the third instrument
Yes.
that has been here.
That's one of the exciting things about this parish. The first organ I played here was the original pipe organ for St. John's congregation, which was built for our previous building, which still stands down in the borough of Carnegie. This building was built in 1929, and they brought that organ over. It was an 1898 molar of about 10 ranks. It was not designed for this building, and it served it well. But in 1981, when I was hired, the organ was in disrepair. We had a fire here in 1979, and there was some water damage to the organ, and they never had it fixed. And I said something had to happen to the organ. Either it had to be rebuilt or replaced. And that fall, under Russ Shield's guidance, we put in a 6-rank 2-manual Wicks pipe organ. Got the organ off the floor and onto a shelf that is where the current organ sits. And then in 2015, a strong music supporter here at the church passed away and had left a very large bequest to the church with the instructions that 40% of that was to go towards music and worship, with an emphasis on a new organ.
Okay.
And Nancy enabled us to get this wonderful Patrick Murphy instrument built for the church. It's 3 manuals and 17 ranks, and it was dedicated in 2017. Okay. So it's just now 5.5 years old.
And it was on the cover of the AGO magazine.
Yes, and it was December of 2018, I believe, was the issue. 18 or 19, I don't remember. But
I still have the copy at home, so
yep.
I'll confirm that.
Yeah.
So the Patrick and Murphys does use parts of the old Wicks.
Yes, about 80% of the old pipe work is included in this instrument. There were a couple ranks of pipes that were just not user-friendly to the new instrument and the new tonal design that Pat worked up. This is a marvelous instrument and has caused us to start a concert series. We hold 2 to 3 concerts a year, and we call it Music on the Avenue because our address is Washington Avenue. And we have had Caroline Robinson from, at the time it was Rochester, New York. She did the dedication recital in 2017. And we've had a couple other organists come in. We've had some choral groups. We've had barbershop singers here. We've had brass groups. So it's been a wonderful addition to not only our church, but the Carnegie community.
What over your years, what challenges have you come across, and how did you overcome them?
First off was learning to be Lutheran. Growing up Presbyterian, we sang 3 hymns, the Gloria Patri, the Doxology, and the choir would sing a response to Scripture or a response to prayer. One response to the end of the prayer, usually a thanks be to God. And coming to the Lutheran Church, my first question was, what's a Kyrie? What is this gospel acclamation? Why are we not singing praise God from whom all blessings flow, and instead we're singing create in me? It was just foreign. So I had to learn how to become a liturgical musician. And to that, I have several people I can thank. My musical and liturgical mentor, Dr. Richard Gabala he was in Mount Lebanon when I started here. He went on to become the director of music for the Arlington Cathedral in Arlington, Virginia. John Romeri was another one who was at Church of the Assumption in Bellevue, Pennsylvania, who went on to become the director of music at the St. Louis Archdiocese Cathedral, the Philadelphia Archdiocese Basilica Cathedral, and his last stop was as the music director at Christ Cathedral in Orange, California, which was formerly Robert Schuller's church, the Crystal Cathedral. They cut their staff back at COVID, and he took that opportunity to retire and move back to be with his family in New York. Father Jim Chiponis, who's a wonderful composer and a very good friend, taught me all kinds of things. And probably the neatest liturgical mentor was a guy named Dan DiNardo. Dan went on to become a priest in the Pittsburgh Diocese, then went on to become an assistant to the bishop and a bishop in, I believe, Wisconsin. And I lost touch with him for about 20 years until he became the Archbishop of the Houston-Galveston Archdiocese in Texas and became a cardinal. And it's really cool to say that I and my wife both know Cardinal Dan, who insists that when he doesn't have people around him, he's still Dan. Mm-hmm. He has stayed grounded, and he has taught me to stay grounded. And I think that's so important. But learning how to be a liturgical musician took me a few years. And now I'm proud to say that because of the work that we do in this particular church, both Bishop Cussero and his predecessor, Bishop McCoyd, have complemented our liturgical services here as some of the best in our synod. And I take a touch of credit for that, but most of the credit goes to God for giving me the talent.
Loud. That's why we don't play them inside very often at Faith either.
Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to say to anybody who may be wanting to come up in being a church music leader?
It's a very rewarding, I don't want to call it a job, but unfortunately it is a job, but it is a very rewarding career, even if it's only a part-time. You will have tensions with pastors, you will have tensions with congregation members or choir members. That's natural because we're all human. I am very blessed here because I have never had a problem with a pastor. I have never had a major problem with any choir members. Maybe one who said, I didn't get to sing that solo. Yeah, but we have somebody from the Metropolitan Opera here to sing, so yeah, you lose. But, I mean, it's never been anything major. And the congregation, when we put the last organ in here, we had some complaints of how loud the organ sounded because of the way it was voiced. And if you sat in the first two pews on the lectern side, you felt the full brunt of it. When we put this organ in, it's more voiced like an English organ, and it has nothing that is harsh. It's big, it can be loud, but it's not overbearing. And we got lucky with that because we tripled the size of the old instrument. And all I can say is don't pass up the opportunity. Join the choir. Help with a kids' choir. Sing in the congregation. We need congregational song. Not everybody is built to be in the choir, or are they meant to be? But think of it this way. You never have to worry about what to wear to church if you have choir robes like we do, or if you're in the back like your choir is. it's, you know, and you always have a seat. No matter how crowded the church gets, the choir always has a place to sit.
And it's your seat. You don't have to worry about a stranger taking it. Because
That's
Lutherans
right.
love when people sit in
Oh,
their seats.
absolutely.
Well, with that, thank you so much for taking time. I know you have a busy day because you have a wedding to go play.
I have a wedding to play at Old St. Luke, and I have a lunch to take my kid here too,
And
with
then
the rest of the family.
And then after the wedding, you get to come back here and play the
Do
Saturday
the
night service.
do the 6 o'clock service, right?
So I'm sure that people would love to hear this wonderful instrument.
I will go over and tickle the ivories, or plastics as they are these days.